sorry. But I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate. We think too much and feel too little. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness. Without these qualities, life will be violent. And all will be lost. All will be lost. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. Dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Will return to the people. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. Now let us fight to free the world, to fulfill that promise. Let us all unite.
Welcome to the Corporation Nation radio program. My name's Clint Richardson. Oh, let's see. It's Thursday. I think I've lost track of the date. It's Thursday, December 5th, 2013. Welcome, and welcome to my regular guest, Mr. Freeman Burt from Colorado. How you doing, Burt?
Hey, pretty good, bud. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Well, so tonight we wanted to, it's a funny thing because there's this whole system of legal atrocities that are set up, and they're set up like traps, basically. And of course, you start off with the smallest, most meaningless, insignificant little trap, which is called what's it called? The municipal court, your local courts, whatever you call them. And they count on the ignorance of most people that you'll stay within that trap, even though there's all kinds of outlets to get out of that trap and basically take your case into a higher jurisdiction. And that's what we want to sort of hit on today, because I think people just automatically assume that if whatever court sends you a letter, whatever jurisdiction that letter is sent from, that's the court that you have to stay. And that's just not the case. We want to break free of this stranglehold of ignorance, really. And what we really want to, I think, stress today, if I'm not mistaken, Bert, is the fact that if you stay within that trap, that first trap that they get you in, then you're going into, again, a court of limited jurisdiction, which means that you have limited rights. And our goal here today is to get from that bottom little court all the way up to the court of what's called general jurisdiction, where your rights are unlimited and the jurisdiction of the court is unlimited. Now, let's start at the beginning here and really discuss this. So, I have a traffic citation, one that I didn't even see a police officer for. It's posted on my window, spit out of a computer from some parking meter police officer that's not even a police officer. It's actually a undocumented worker that came up and joined a private corporation out of New York that is hired through public partnership to be my parking meters in Salt Lake City. So that's where we're at right now. Okay, so not even a police officer, really, just parking police. That's just the name of their little title. So now I've got a letter in the mail that says I have a parking ticket and I need to either pay it or go to court.
Yeah, so what most people would do in any kind of a situation, either that or whatever, getting actually a moving violation or being accused of violating some other regulations, people go and immediately try to say, no, it doesn't apply to me because of this, blah, 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 and they immediately begin making affirmations about their position, and they forget that they have nothing to prove. So your first step is to begin the process of communications with them and getting them to provide you with the necessary proof so that you can then rebut whatever it is that they're saying. Because, if they're giving you a ticket for being parked in a particular location, then you must be bound by whatever that regulation is that says you cannot park there. So that's where you begin, the regulation that says that it applies to you. And then you go to the regulation, you read it for yourself, and of course it always sounds like it does apply to you. But then when you look at the construction of the particular title, you say, well, here's another question about it. Then there's another construction that section. By construction, what I'm talking about is a part of the title of the statute that gives you the critical definitions of that particular title or that particular chapter. And you begin, like Clint said previously, you begin from in the inside outwardly. You begin from the chapter that the particular accusation is in, and then you work your way outwardly from there. So you start from that chapter, then you go to the title, and then from the title you go to the construction of the entire statute. And then you see how everything actually fits in a nice little puzzle. And then you're able to say, well, according to this, it says this, it says that. Can you prove that I am any of those things? And then they have to provide you with the proof. Then you take it a step further, which is, can you prove my status in your political court? And right now we're in the process of exercising that in several court cases, and it's throwing the people in the courts for a loop because they don't know how to handle that, because they don't deal with your status. They assume your status is basically something of a piece of property. They're not used to treating you with anything besides that.
Well, what is the assumed status?
The assumed status is that you are something that belongs to the federal government. You are property of the United States.
You're a bonded person.
Yeah, because all persons are either an employee of the federal government or a person under protective status of the federal government.
Which is basically the same thing.
Yeah, I'm just trying to use their terms.
Yeah. All right. Well, so now one of the tricks that you have used successfully, and it's not really a trick, it's just, hey, I don't want to be in this particular court, so here's what I'm going to tell you. Now, and I like this approach because it just automatically dismisses you from this court and gets you into the next court. And that is to challenge, to actually countersue, one of the most important things you can do, of course. And, of course, you're going to countersue for an amount that's more than that court can actually handle. That automatically kicks the case up to the next level of jurisdiction, which is still not necessarily where we might want to be, but at least you're out of that totally teeny municipal court that often we find is owned by the judge that actually oversees the court. He rents out the court to the city. He pays his employees with the funds that he collects from you, so he's in a conflict of interest. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, that municipal court. So you want to get out of that, and the easiest way to do that, at least from what you've explained, is to simply countersue for an amount larger than that court can adjudicate.
Yeah, and of course you want your suit to be based on something that you can back up with. You just want to come up with a large number just out of thin air. But the countersuit thing involves a few different aspects to it. One of the most important things is that it now places all the witnesses that are going to be used against you in that. I'm assuming we're talking about a criminal case, in a situation where they may not want to testify because anything they say can and will be used against them in any court of law, including yours. So it puts them in a very delicate position. Of course, it's assuming that you are in fact innocent, and then the truth can then begin to work in your favor. And it's funny when you look at the truth for what it is, and then you apply it. It's beautiful. It's just beautiful.
When you act in honor, you mean? It's almost like having an invisible shield of protection against you.
Yes.
All right, folks, we'll be back. Stay with us. Freeman Burt.
Was successfully completed. Reality.
welcome back. Again with me today is Freeman Burt from Colorado. Now, Burt, what we really want, what is the final goal? Again, we have this set of traps, set of little courts that each one has a limited and more limited jurisdiction as you go down the line all the way to the municipal court. And of course, then there's the whole concept of mediation, which, of course, corporations love for you to put your signature on that you'll mediate the case in front of their chosen mediator instead of actually using your rights to go to court. What is the final court we actually want to end up in?
Well, I mean, we want to end up in a court of general jurisdiction, which would be a court of record, a court of general jurisdiction, which means unlimited jurisdiction, which means it can hear pretty much anything, unless there's something specific that court cannot handle. But the court of jurisdiction in every state, people don't realize this, it's actually parallel to the Supreme Court of that state. See, people believe that the Supreme Court of, let's say, Utah is the top court. It's not. And actually, in reality, because the Supreme Court mostly acts as an appellate court, it cannot be above the Superior Court. And the Superior Court is a court of unlimited jurisdiction.
Well, would it be more accurate to say that the Supreme Court deals more with quote unquote constitutional issues? In other words, it doesn't deal with the petty things that that go on in the civil and criminal realm. It only deals with things that are going to fundamentally affect the nature of the corporation, which is the state or the
it deals with statutes, right? With regulations. Right. With things along those lines. But here's another funny thing that people don't realize. The higher you go into a court, okay, and I'm just talking like within the state, because if you're talking federal, the lowest court in the federal system is the district court. That's like a trash court. No, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but
oh, please, they don't deserve any respect. What are you talking about?
But it is. It's like the lowest court in the state. That's what the district court is, and a lot of the people that what's that?
Why do you say that?
Because it is. It's the lowest court in the federal.
What do you mean by lowest?
Well, that's where you begin, right? When you have a federal case, you always begin in the district courts.
Oh, okay.
In the federal district court.
I'm sorry, federal. Okay.
Yeah, federal. You begin there, and then you go to the appellate, and then from the appellate you would go to the Supreme Court, right? And nothing really matters in the federal system until you get to the federal court, because in this lower district courts, they're there basically to railroad you. So the best thing that you can do is to set up a record in those courts. But anyway, I don't want to go on a tangent. So my point is that within a state, the higher you go in a court, which means on your way up to the Superior Court, the closer you are getting to principles of law. The lower you go, the farther you're getting away from principles of law, but you're getting closer to contractual law.
Yeah.
Which means the lower you go in the courts, then contract becomes more imperative.
Yeah, so the more the shackles can be secured on your hands, the lower the court is.
Yeah, because they're going on contract. And I mean, right now I'm dealing with one case in family court, which is about the dirtiest court you could possibly be in. But family court, there's one lady that I'm helping. The judge keeps acting like this marriage contract. They even have it on the paperwork. It's in the marriage of, and he lists her and her, the father of the boy, who, they weren't really even in a common law marriage, but they're treating them as though they were in some kind of a marriage. When you go back and, well, you're an expert on that, and you look at all the things about marriage, you come to realize that this court does not have jurisdiction over this lady or her son. But they're assuming that they do.
I had someone actually tell me that as long as the two parents are willing and able to do so, that they can go and they can basically sign the uncontested document, or docket, excuse me, that says, okay, we are going to settle our disputes outside of court. We don't need the state as a third-party contractor or negotiator. Therefore, you're no longer part of our case. We will settle it, through some other means than the state. And then the state, once that docket is contested, if you will, then once it's signed by both parties, the state is no longer actually in. I should say the state no longer has a contractual duty or obligation to fulfill its contractual,
Well, that's correct. And see, what people don't realize, I wish I could just take all parents that are in family court and just slap them really hard to wake them up. Because the worst thing you can do to your child is for you to get involved in a family court.
Yeah.
Because your child becomes a pawn.
It's a business, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and when you're in family court is not designed to resolve anything. It's designed to keep it going forever.
Yeah.
Because
it's
a money-making machine for the attorneys.
And they know this. And again, when you're talking about, you've just assigned a legal status to a court. That means that it will not be a general jurisdiction court. It will only hear what it wants to hear in its particular jurisdictional boundaries. So if you try to bring up the Constitution, if you try to bring up the law, they will not hear it. This is why people get so confused when they go to court. They try to bring in their own, either the state statutes or they bring in other things, and the court says, we don't hear that here. That's not why we're here. We're here strictly in this very limited capacity because you've agreed to it.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to teach people is that, you got to be extremely careful when you go to court and start claiming anything related to the Constitution, because you really don't want to claim anything from the Constitution. It's the minute you claim something from the Constitution, you just took yourself out of your state.
Well, we've said that before, and the minute you do that, then the judge recognizes almost instantly that you have no idea what you're talking about. You've just made one of the biggest fallacious mistakes you're going to make by claiming that your rights come from the Constitution.
Yeah, you never, ever, ever want to claim constitutional rights because you don't need them.
Well, they're not inherent either.
No. They have nothing to do with you. The only thing is that the federal government cannot step on you as you being one of those free people, that status of being a free people that actually existed prior to the creation of that Constitution. That is the status that you care about, not any status related to that Constitution. Your status existed prior to the federal government.
Yeah.
And then you and I talked about, I don't think we did it on the show. We're talking about the fact that the states, that the federal government is actually a compact between that federal government and the government of the state. It's an administrative agreement. He has nothing to do with you.
It's referred to as a jurisdictional district.
Well, that's what the District of Columbia is. I mean, it's
right, but then each district in and of itself within the state becomes what you were just saying, correct?
Yeah, it becomes a federal district for the federal government.
Right, so you're actually leaving your state and entering into the federal, the Washington D.C. basically. All right, folks, stay with us. We'll be back. New commercial.
Scientists have been battling to understand what this unappealing object is all about. What the object is all about.
Information in the form of energy streams in simultaneously through all of our sensory systems in the form of energy, and then it explodes into this enormous collage.
All right, folks, welcome back.
Of what this present moment
The brain, yes, the brain.
what it feels like and what it
Just love
feels
that
like.
song. So, friend Joe sent me a little message. He was listening, and he said something that actually might make this a little more clear. Actually kind of turned on a light bulb in my head. You know, anything that makes this stuff easier to understand for folks, I think is worth mentioning. He says that your default status is consent. That's a very interesting little sentence, because literally what that means is that the court automatically assumes, or whoever is sending you a letter and an action, whatever, they're automatically assuming that, one, you consent to the fact that you're going to be placed in a court of limited jurisdiction. And again, as we discussed, the farther you go down into that limited jurisdiction, the farther you get away from your inherent rights, your natural rights, and pretty much limit your rights to strictly the political rights that are assigned to you. So your default status as a citizen, basically, is that you consent to all of the things that are being thrown at you. It's a good way of looking at it. I thought that was a...
Well, but let me clarify something. When you're moving down the ladder of this courts, when I say that they become more contractual, what I'm talking about is that they're actually honoring one of your highest rights, which is your right to contract.
Right.
Because when you're getting into this lower, and you know, your friend Joe is correct, they are assuming that they're treating you and operating with you with your consent. Because the contract that they are laying on you, or that they are assuming that applies to you, if you don't argue and say, hey, wait a minute, you're assuming that we have a contract, but I haven't seen it. Can I please have a copy of the contract? See, now you're not consenting.
Of course, that's this is where it gets confusing again, though, because when we're talking about right, the word right, it means your privilege. It does not mean your inherent right. When you look at the maxims of law, it's funny because if you actually look at these maxims of law, they basically say, well, if you are a slave, you know, you've contracted, you are, you know, basically your stuff belongs to your master. You know, the maxims of law are very honest. They don't, they tell you that you can contract your rights away. You have that right to contract your natural rights away and accept the political duties and rights that come. So to say that you're getting, to say that they're honoring or acting in an honorary capacity is a double-edged. It's almost like a double entendre. It's like saying that the courts are obeying the what's it called, the law of thieves, the honor among thieves, basically.
Yeah, and that's what it is.
I mean, it sounds good when you say it, but when you actually tear it apart, it's not good. Don't get confused.
But yeah, so the thing is, they're dealing with you from a contractual point of view whenever you're dealing in these lower courts. Like right now I'm getting ready to fight this toll fee thing that they've been sending me. It's like $500 they're trying to collect from me, and they're not going to get a penny. So I'm getting ready to enter a series of communication with them, which basically is going to lead to me suing them, because they won't be able to answer any of the questions that I'll be putting to them. But basically you want to ask for all the information that they can give you to allow you to determine what is your contractual position with them. I mean, if you were to walk into a local swimming pool and all of a sudden the people are saying, hey, you know, you can't be in here because of blah, 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 blah. And then you start arguing, and all of a sudden you come, oh, you needed to know what the contract is that allows me to be here. Yeah, see, I bought that house over there and I'm part of the HOA and say, here's my contract. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, well, come on in, have a good time. So it all comes down to some kind of contract. But if they assume that you don't have one, then they're going to kick you out, right?
Well, sure, but the general assumption is that you agree that you are a citizen and you agree to the entirety of both the U.S. code, the state code, the municipal code, and any other code.
And that's the other thing, is that their assumption is that you are in the particular state as a resident, which means that you're not from there, you don't belong there. And they're treating you as though you are something of the United States that needs to be protected. And then you're in this particular state, and they're just simply, I mean, I know it's difficult to comprehend, but they're actually protecting you. They're protecting you for the federal government. And every rule, every statute, every jail, all these things are actually for your benefit.
They protect you just like a slaughter yard rancher protects the cows before they get their heads chopped off.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Before they collect all your blood. But anyway, so if you can see the reality of how they're treating you, it makes it much easier to understand how to navigate through their system. Because if you know that they're seeing you as a cow, for example, then you're like, well, maybe I shouldn't walk on all four legs. Maybe that will give them a chance to see me as a man as opposed to a cow. Maybe I shouldn't wear those horns on my head. And those type of things. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I see. Because they think I'm a cow, they're expecting me to go to the trough and eat. But I'm going to say, well, if that's what I'm supposed to eat, can you show me some kind of paperwork, some kind of contract that means that I need to go to the trough and eat?
So, I mean, basically the cow is saying, I am not livestock, I am bovine spirituous, animalis. I am not livestock. You've assigned the status of livestock. You call me a cow, but I'm not a cow, I'm bovine. I mean, it's basically, it's just the same thing. We call every commodity out there, we have a different name for it depending on what status we're assigning to it. Is it your child? Is it your boy or girl? What is it? When you go to court, you better damn well know what to call your offspring. You better damn well know that the word children is a legal status. You got to know these things.
Yeah, and knowing if you don't know what your status is, then they're gonna give you one. And that's what I'm trying to teach people in that website that I'm setting up, is that you must know your status. This is something that they never teach you in school because they don't want you to know your status. They want you to assume the status of property of the United States, and that is in the Constitution. I think it's Article 4, Section 4, that it says that that the states have to respect all property of the United States.
Well, one of these days, I hope that you get a response back that says your status is that of an occupied foreign land under the Lieber Code, that that you are under military rule. I hope that is you actually get that in writing someday, because that's really what your status is, technically.
Well,
but they don't want to put that on the record.
Well, and a lot of these things all make sense when you begin to see, like, if you think about why there is all this military posts all over the place, and you come to realize that, well, it's so that the federal government can assist the states in controlling the property of the United States. Mm-hmm. That's why they're there, to control those 14th Amendment citizens that were freed, and they just may revolt because they were sick of being slaves. So if we understand some of the basics of how these people operate, then it makes it much easier for us to proceed and learn, because once you get to see these things for the reality of what they are, a lot of headaches go away, because when I was learning this stuff, I was getting headaches every other day.
Oh, well, yeah. Recognizing your own state of being is the hardest part, and that you've been fooled your whole life. I mean, that's pulling the wool away from your own eyes as opposed to that of others is the hardest part about this. We'll be back, folks.
Is this real, or is this just right? The world is like a ride. You think it's real, it's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. The world is like a ride. You think it's real, it's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. Life goes up and down, round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored. Up and down, round and round, and it's very loud. Don't worry, don't be afraid, it's just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice between fear and love. Why are we here?
I think we're part of a greater wisdom than we will ever understand. A higher order. Call it what you want. Know what I call it? The big electron. The big electron. The big electron. It doesn't punish, doesn't reward. It doesn't judge at all. It just is, and so are we. For a little while.
All right, folks, welcome back. You know, I have overused this particular part of the U.S. Code, but I find it, between this and the biological weapons program, I find this one little section of U.S. Code to be the most pinnacle point that I can possibly show to you to show you what a right is. And it's not what you think. Now, we talked about the importance of contract law and the enlightenment or the honoring of such contract law. But again, what does that mean? So I'm always going to refer to this because this is a statement of your enslavement. Okay, listen to this, folks. You've probably heard me say this before. Title 42, which of course is the public health and welfare, which is where Obamacare, of course, most of it's going to be or is. Title 42 of U.S. Code, Section 1981. Okay, equal rights under the law. Okay, that doesn't mean that you have rights. It means that you have the equal capacity to be punished and forced to obey the law. Okay, equal rights under the law. Statement, Section A, Statement of Equal Rights. All persons within the jurisdiction of the United States. We just talked about that. Which court you're going to choose? You go to district court? Well, you're in the jurisdiction of the United States. All persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall have the same right in every state and territory to make and enforce contracts, to sue, be parties, give evidence, and to the full and equal benefit of all laws and proceedings for the security of persons and property as is enjoyed by white citizens. Okay, there it is. Okay? The security of persons and property. That is your government saying we are your caretaker. We are contractually obligated to take care of you, to protect you, to secure your rights. But that's not the end, you see. Because it also then says, oh, and by the way, all persons within the jurisdiction of the United States shall be subject to like punishment, pains, penalties, taxes, licenses, and exactions of every kind, and to no other. Now, if you go and look at the definition of exaction, you're going to find that it's defined, quite literally, as extortion. Money that is not due. What does a police officer do? He exacts from you. He takes money from you that is not due to him. This is your right. And everybody has the equal right to be extorted from, to be punished, put in pain, have penalties put against them, to be taxed, to be licensed. Okay? This is what we're trying to explain to you when we try to define what it is to have political rights, which are just revocable privileges. Part B says you have the right to make and enforce contracts. It defines that. It says the term, for this section, the term make and enforce contracts includes the making, performance, modification, and termination of contracts, and the enjoyment of all benefits, privileges, terms, and conditions of the contractual relationship. Folks, your contractual relationship as a citizen or employee of the United States, that's what this is talking about. That is why you can be punished, put in pain, have penalties assessed to you, taxes, licenses, and extortions, exactions of every kind. You see, it's your contractual right to agree to this, to contract with the United States for its protection. Meanwhile, this is what you get. You see, this is the perfect example, in my opinion, Title 42, Section 1981. It should be put on T-shirts. I mean, literally, this is the end-all, be-all of the enslavement to law that we don't comprehend until we actually read it. It's like reading the Constitution until you actually read it. Or like reading the oaths that we've done on air now. Until you actually read the oath, you realize that these people aren't taking oaths to the human population. Until you read to the people, until you read U.S. Code, you don't realize what your contractual nature actually entails. And I'm going to say it again. Punishment, pain, penalties, taxes, license, and extortion or exaction. All right? So this is what is assumed of you. This is the assumption. This is the presumption. When you go into court, that you agree that this is your right. And they will treat that as a contractual obligation that they have to protect that right, and therefore they're going to assign pains, penalties, taxes, licenses, and extortion of every kind.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that anyone that's in the jury box needs to keep in mind, is that even though the man or woman that's being accused of violating some XYZ law that he never heard of in his life cannot possibly be convicted by you being in the jury just because the man happens to be ignorant about his status.
But Burt, ignorance of the law is no excuse, surely, is it not?
Yeah, and they misuse that expression all the time because ignorance of the law means ignorance of the true law, not ignorance of regulations.
Well, if we were to apply that to the courts, they'd all be guilty, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they're all ignorant of the law.
They're all purposefully ignorant of the law.
Yes, because they try not to operate on the law.
Now, there's a word in here that I'd like you to explain. Maybe might have to look it up. But the word enjoyment is a very interesting word. You know, yes. they put the fact that you get to enjoy all of these rights. What does enjoyment actually mean?
Yeah, well, it's that they're giving you the. I mean, it kind of goes along with that consensual thing. They're putting it out there. They're opening up the trough, and they're giving you the privilege, the right to go eat from it.
It almost sounds like enjoin.
Yeah, and as you're choking, eating up all that flop, well, you should be happy. So that's why anyone that complains about the system and then they're enjoying from it, well,
here's the Bouvier's 1856 definition: the right for enjoyment, the right. We just discussed what a right is. The right which a man possesses of receiving all the product of a thing for his necessity, his use, or his pleasure. All right. So your enjoyment literally means that the state believes it's necessary for you to enjoy. It doesn't matter if you enjoy it or not. It's necessity. The state requires you to enjoy something, you see.
Yeah, so if they want you to go feed from the trough and that's your enjoyment, well, you better go enjoy it.
And if they poison the trough with a little chlorine and fluoride, hey, that is for your protection. You see, that's literally the mindset of these people, and it's just it's necessary.
And then a rancher actually would really understand the low points of all these things, because a rancher must look after the herd, not after the individual cow.
Sure, it's all for the betterment of the community, right? If you have a sick cow, you're going to separate it from the rest. Surprised they haven't started doing that with us. The laws are there to do it. The emergency statutes are there. The president's acting as dictator already. Why not, huh? All right, folks, stay with us. We'll take some calls in the second hour for Freeman Burt.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines, you are men. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful. Let us use that power to make this life a wonderful adventure. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world to do away with greed. A world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Do not despair. The hate of men will pass and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. Let us all unite.
All right, folks, welcome back here in the Corporation Nation, and I'm Clint Richardson. Thursday, December 5th, 2013. Oh, Bert, what a tangled web we're unweaving, huh? It's such a ridiculous. This whole thing to me is so ridiculous. I got to tell you, I really enjoy getting together every week and actually making fun of it because it's so silly.
It is, and what I always tell people is that it's a game, but people pay with real blood.
It's true.
And that's the sad thing, it's a game in family court, but the pieces of the game are real children whose lives are completely ruined by this courts to degrees that are unimaginable. Some children actually die in the system. So we need to learn. So I put in there for you that one section that deals about the property of the U.S., Article 4, Section 3. You want to read that or you want me to?
Article 4, Section 3 of the Corporate Charter of the United States says...
The wonderful Constitution.
The Congress shall have power... I don't know. And power, by the way, is capitalized. And I always want to draw people to that particular fact because that means a specific type of power. And you'd have to actually go into the legal dictionary and figure out what that word power is actually referring to and possibly other things, just like the word people. The word people was capitalized. Many things in the Constitution are capitalized. Property in this particular code is capitalized. Rules and regulations are also capitalized words. That's because they're only referring to specific things. And that's very important to understand. And a lot of the people who are writing these constitutional articles out, sections, are omitting those So if you see any constitutional writing that omits the capital letters, you better go to a different source, because these are very important. It says the Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be construed as to prejudice, capitalized, any claims, capitalized, of the United States or of any particular state. The hell does that mean, Bert?
That anything that belongs to the United States has to be respected by everybody else. Doesn't matter where that property is. So the states owe that type of allegiance, if you want to use that word, to the federal government. They owe that responsibility to the federal government by being part of the union that was created under that Constitution. And part of the requirement of being a member of that union is that they must respect the property belonging to the United States.
But isn't the 14th Amendment citizen, isn't the name that we all carry around, isn't that property of the United States? Isn't the Social Security number also property of the United States?
Yes. So when someone calls themselves, I'm a proud American citizen of the United States, you're just telling the world that you're a proud piece of property that belongs to the United States.
You just told the world that Congress shall have the power to dispose of you and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property that you have that actually belongs to the United States. And, very brilliant. Section 2, Article 4 says, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. And I always found this to be a really interesting thing, because it's not, again, this thing doesn't give you rights, because your rights are inherent. You had those, their blood, they're in their rights don't exist in reality when it comes to the legal code. It's always a privilege or an immunity. It's not, so when we look up the word immunity, for instance, in Bouvier's Law Dictionary, it says an exemption from serving in an office or performing duties which the law generally requires other citizens to perform. So if you have an immunity, you have an immunity from law. What does the Constitution say about the congressmen and senators? They are immune from law when they are acting their part as congressmen and senators. I don't remember what section that is. They have immunity from law. They cannot get in trouble. According to the Constitution, when the Congress assembles and when it travels, it is immune from law. I mean, that's basically what the Constitution says. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, so the part that's important here is that there's actually at least one court case that says that this section of the Constitution, talking about citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states, he said this does not apply to the District of Columbia. So if you're a citizen of the District of Columbia, that section of the Constitution doesn't apply to you. And there's one perfect example of this, is that the people in the District of Columbia do not get to vote in national elections. That right there is one very obvious thing. But there's more to that. It means that they have no immunities of the several states. So that means the immunities and privileges that someone may have in one particular state, the guy in the District of Columbia cannot claim it. So if you're a citizen of the United States and your residence is considered to be in the District of Columbia, or you're somehow tied to the District of Columbia, you have no privileges or rights related to the several states, which means the Constitution basically
usurps states' rights.
Yeah, has nothing to do with you.
I know, and it's funny when you think about it that people are still so adamant that that there's such a thing as states' rights. I mean, it seems pretty obvious by now that there's not. Hey, Burt, let's take a phone call. We'll take some phone calls today because I know people are always dying to talk to you. They don't really care about me, just you. Ken in Fort Worth, welcome to the show.
Hello there. Hey, a quick cold weather tip is use rubbing alcohol on everything on your car. Keys, windows, windshield wipers. It'll thaw everything out in a heartbeat.
Hey, well, I'm going to need it tomorrow morning.
Yeah, keep it right by your door on the outside, and you can use it anytime you need it. You know,
just straight rubbing alcohol. That's right. Alcohol doesn't freeze.
That thaws out everything. Yeah.
Can I throw it on my local judge?
I don't know about that.
That'll work.
I don't know. Thaw him out. A couple of years ago, we had a little thing about with the code man, and Pat, my wife says. Hey, we went trial by jury. We went down there, and the bailiff gives you the little ticket there, and we write on there, I'm not a fiction on a corporation, don't live in his own doodle metro. Hand it to him when that's not thing heard of it.
Oh, wait. We'll be right back. Ken, I want to hear this.
All right, okay.
Stay with us, folks. We'll be back.
Depend on weaponry. With schools, media, money, and meds, we control every aspect of your life through ideological hegemony. But if you think you need guns to stop tyranny, then what you waiting for? We've already stripped you of your liberty, privacy, civil rights, and dignity. You want some more?
Hey, neighbor. Welcome again to this neighborhood. I'd like to show you something. You know what this is? Well, maybe if I press this button. There are so many things to learn about in this world, and so many people who can help us learn. Did you ever grow anything in the garden of your mind? You can grow ideas in the garden of your mind. It's good to be curious about many things. You can think about things and make believe. All you have to do is think. You can think about things and make believe.
We are the Corporation Nation, talking to Freeman Burt. And on the line with us today is Ken in Fort Worth. Please continue, sir.
Maybe I talked too fast. We went down. My wife says, "Hey, I want a trial by jury," and they said, "Okay." So we went down there, and the bailiff gave you a little ticket there, and we write on there, "I'm not a fiction, I'm in a corporation, don't live in the zone, don't live in the metro," and gave it to him. That was the last we heard of it. And then they told me try to tear my house wife down. I asked, "Is this a contract?" Yeah. And trying to think another. Oh, well, they were in the process of tearing my wife's house down, and we stood in front of the little council, whatever you want to call it. I says, "Could you write us out a ticket for all this?" They stood mute. Right on TV.
Is the house still there?
No, it's torn down. And you know what? No judge put any piece of paper on that house. They went around the court. That's what a New World Order is. They don't need no courts.
Unfortunately, you're right, and that's because, again, what the theme of this week is, hey, folks, it's time to stand up for yourselves, not rely on the courts, not rely on the system.
They think you're an animal.
We are.
Tell them you ain't. I get bills for taxes. I'm not a corporation, don't live in a zone, I'm not an animal, I'm a child of God. I don't take part in sustainable development. I don't live in an urban village. They think you're stupid.
Exactly. And that's what they capitalize on.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. And they put your name in all caps. They're writing to some corporation. I'm not a corporation.
Well, they have to think you're stupid because how else can they claim that you're a ward of the state and they have to protect you?
Right. But now I guess you got to write over your straw man if you wish. Now, another thing is, I'm starting to think that Federal Reserve notes, FRAUD, Federal Reserve accounting unit dollars, are for corporations to pay corporations. They make you a corporation, you use Federal Reserve dollars. I write out on hospital bills, I'm not a corporation, don't live in a zone, don't live in a metro, and the bills stop coming.
Well, there you go.
Try your luck.
There's another way to do it.
Try your luck. I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay, buddy.
All right. Thanks, Ken. Well, that was one of the things that Michael Tellinger was saying, and he has it on his website, he made his own, well, first he got the banks to admit that they don't actually use money. There's no such thing as money. It's all bills of credit and bills of exchange and all that stuff. And so he printed his own promissory note and handed it in. And he said, you know, you have two choices. You can either let this sit as a contract where I will pay you the amount requested, $500 a month, or you can securitize it, which will nullify the debt. And since they securitize everything, he knew what he was doing. Well, guess what? That debt was nullified because they securitized and made that promise to pay into a financial instrument. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what we're dealing with is so sinister and so out of the realm of anything that people could consider natural or even contemplate for the most part. So, I mean, I have to say, I'll agree with Ken that money is kind of the root of all evil, I think. And when I say evil, I mean the legal version of evil. By the way, if you didn't know, the legal definition in Black's Law Dictionary of evil is to go against government. Even when it's acting unconstitutionally, that is what's considered evil, to conspire against government. So, you know... So anyway, Bert, oh, what a mess. Did we actually get to the point where, so again, we're in the municipal court. We've counterclaimed and countersued, and we've said, well, we're going to countersue for an amount greater than this court can handle. Where does that then prop us up to?
Well, I mean, that brings you up to the higher court. But even when you get to that higher court, you still have a battle, because anyone who's familiar with the way the courts are set up, they are full of divisions. They have all kinds of divisions in there, and they'll try to put you into the division that's convenient for them to handle you, whichever way they can handle you the easiest. So once you enter the courtroom, then it's pretty much up to you how you're going to allow that court to be handled. It's either going to be handled with you being in a status that can only belong in a statutory court, or it's going to be handled in a court where you, as a man, can only stand. Because a free man cannot stand in a statutory court. A free man can only stand in a court of general jurisdiction.
But the truth of the matter is, you want to establish this before you ever I mean, that's the point, is to never step foot into court in the first place unless you absolutely must. Really, most of this is you're wanting to establish this through the battle of paper, through the battle of mail, instead of trying to do this in court where they can just say, no, you're screwed.
Yeah, so when you enter your paperwork from the beginning, you have to make it clear the type of court that it is that you are paying for, because, you know, they make you pay a fee, which is actually a docket fee, which is only required of attorneys. That's another battle that I'm taking on now. But anyway, yeah, it's up to you what type of court you're going to be standing in.
And really, you should not be paying any fees.
No, because they're called docket fees. And if you look up what a docket fee is, it's something that is paid by an attorney. You're not an attorney. You shouldn't be paying for access in the court. You're not in commerce. You're not making money by being in court. You're there to protect your rights. That's what the court is for. The court is already prepaid. The court of general jurisdiction is prepaid by the state. There should be no fees.
So a good way to know if you're in the wrong court then is whether or not they're charging you fees. And if you do end up paying the fee, then you're actually contractually agreeing to a special service provided by the court, which will generally be a limited jurisdiction service.
Yeah, you're buying your way into a statutory court.
Again, money being the root of evil. It's stay away from money when you're talking in the courtroom, because if you contract with the currency, then you are literally putting yourself at the whim of that contractual nature.
Exactly.
So interesting. Well, let's take another phone call. We have Art. Art does not tell me where he is from.
Good evening, gentlemen.
He's from the District of Columbia.
No, I'm not.
He's from hell on earth? Where?
I have created my own hell, yes, gentlemen. Before we get to what I actually called in about, you mentioned power. Power. A power is an authority to do some act in relation to real property or to the creation or revocation of an estate therein or a charge thereon, which the owner granting or reserving such power might himself perform for any purpose. Power, capital P, is sometimes used in the same sense as right, small r, as when we speak of the powers of user and disposition, which the owner of property has over it, but strictly speaking, and pay close attention to this part, a power is that which creates a special or exceptional right or enables a person to do something which he otherwise could not do.
Right, exactly. Thank you. And what that really means is that they are claiming God as their power. We'll be back, folks.
Derivatives, quantitative easing, trade imbalances, recession, low GDP, nations close to collapsing, and subprime loans, foreclosed homes, and people's taxes spent to bail out too big to fail AAA banks again. Fear levels rising as a US crash seems imminent, having smashed the debt ceiling of 14 trillion. Despite protests and clashes in Athens streets, the IMF imposed structurally unjust programs.
You want to know something funny?
Economy entered our language from the
Everybody's afraid of the crash, the stock market crash, and it's kind of funny because nobody seems to realize that there's always two sides to every story. You know, there is no such thing as a crash. If you want to say it's a crash, well, sure, the people might crash. But see, with every stock that goes up or down a dollar, there's someone on the other side of the bet, you see. So when people start selling their stocks, and they get lower and lower prices, there's someone on the other side that has either shorted the stock market and are fulfilling their contracts and making trillions of dollars, like what happened with 9/11. Oh, millions and millions of short bets. Well, try trillions taken out of the economy. You see, there is no such thing as a financial crash. The stock market really has nothing to do with the economy. That's the strange part about it. So what's going to happen now that we're up to, 16,000 on the market? The reason it went up so high is because the Federal Reserve came out and said, we don't have an exit strategy for all this crap that we're doing. We're buying treasuries. We're doing all these funny things. We don't have an exit strategy. So naturally, the stock market's going to go up on that announcement because eventually it's going to come back down. People know this. Insiders know this. Government who controls the stock market, corporations, know this. So when the so-called crash happens, rest assured that while everyone else is crashing, very, very few people are going to be making all of that money on the other side of the bet. And that's all the stock market is. It's just a betting arena. And if you control, like the NFL and the NBA, if you control the outcome of the games, if you control the point spread of the games, then you can control how much people are going to win or lose in the betting industry, and you can make millions because you know the outcome of the sports book. That's all the stock market is. It's a sports book. Anyway, Art, please read that last part again about the definition of power.
You like that, did you? Yeah, that last part, and this is really key. A power is that which creates a special or exceptional right or enables a person to do something which he could not otherwise do. Now, when you think about this, think about the word, and look it up in Black's, Bovier's, Balanchine's, I don't care which one you look at it, the word license. Okay? Now, this is why when you go into a court, you can't use my constitutional rights because you have no rights. Why? Because you have no power. Now, this goes back to what you guys were talking about earlier when you were talking about the right to enjoy this, that, or the other thing. What they're telling you in essence is you have the right to be raped, beaten and brutalized as they see fit, and you have the right to enjoy it. Now, something else you said, and I found this very key, and I just level people to the ground when I tell them this, that, how to put this gently,
hey, we're not gentle around here.
What they're saying is, what you said was that they are charged with taking care of you and providing for you. Well, wait a minute. If they are charged with taking care of their property, their chattel, that means aren't they responsible for feeding, clothing, housing, providing medical? Gee, how many people in this country go to bed hungry? They are without homes. They are clothing falling off of them, shoes falling apart. They don't have good medical, so they're sick all the dang time. I contend that they have drastically failed in the care of their livestock. Now, this goes to, I remember back in 2004, I was walking home. I was living in St. Petersburg, Florida, in South St. Pete. And anybody who knows anything about South St. Pete knows it's not a very white boy-friendly neighborhood, I'm here to tell you right now. But I'm walking home. I noticed this dog in a guy's backyard, half chow, half golden lab. This thing was sick-looking. It had been beaten and brutalized. I walked into the backyard, and I told the guy, if this is how you take care of your dog, you don't deserve to have it. I took the dog, I took it home, nursed it back to health, got it to medical, and fed it, and everything it needed, nursed it back to health, turned out to be a beautiful dog. So if our ranch owners are not taking care of us properly, maybe we need new ranch owners. Or maybe we should go back to being wild animals.
Well, I say we go back to being outlaws. Because what does that term really mean? It means literally that if you and I have a dispute there, Art, we can walk out in the middle of the street with our guns on our hips and we can shoot each other over our problem. And it's no one else's business but our own. If we're stupid enough to solve our differences that way, that's great. We're sovereign men. That's it. Yep. We've just decided what our law is, and we've agreed to it. And I've unfortunately just killed you, Art, because there's no way I'm going to let you outdraw me.
Well, there's one thing that Art just said that is very, very profound, that if people would just think about it a little bit. If you were to act like a good, educated slave, your life just from that point of view would be so much better. If you just simply demanded from the rancher to treat you with the minimum of respect that he's required to treat you with. If you just demanded that little tiny bit, things all around you would be way much better. The problem is that no one even demands the very crumbs that they're supposed to have.
Well, I think the real problem is that there's no weight behind our demands. We might even wear our gun on our hip, but they know we're not going to use it. We've been so conditioned and so trained. There is no power, there's that word again, behind our requests or behind our demands.
Well, but yes and no, because if you had an educated jury, okay, that educated jury would know that they cannot convict you for smoking a cannabis sativa joint because it's not a drug.
Exactly.
No one would be convicted if they just knew some of the basic regulations.
Yeah, and see, you make such a beautiful point, too, because I'll give you a perfect example around here. I walk out there, I walk into a chicken pen. I've got 24 birds out there in that pen. I can go in the middle of that pen. I don't have to have no food with me. Squat down in the middle of that pen. Those birds jump up on my shoulder. They jump in my lap. Why? I take really good care of them. I go out here to take care of my rabbits, to feed and water my rabbits every morning and every afternoon. They run to their cage doors, and they compete for my attention. Why? Because I take really good care of them. My dog will actually come to me, and she will pester me until I realize, oh, your food bowl is empty, or your water bowl. She demands that I provide her with what I have promised her. I mean, we're talking dumb animals here. But yet, what do? We sit around and we let the government Give it to us raw.
Well, and you'd think that government would learn a lesson from this. Like, it seems like they'd want us to be going to the front of our cages to beg for their handouts. If they just treated us a little better, gosh, I might even become a more desirable slave. But they don't. And you'd think after a while they'd get the clue that people just wanted to be treated with equity, not with equality, but with equity. Where their rights are taken care of, but that's just, I would think they would want us to be good little sheep that are very happy to see their rancher, and they could do that overnight. Literally, a mandate could come out instantly that says, "Okay, police, we're not gonna revenue collect anymore. We're gonna make sure that people are safe on the highway. We're gonna make sure people are safe here. We're no longer requiring you to write 3 tickets a month. We're no longer requiring." All these stupid things. We want to take care of the people. We're still going to extract a crap load of money out of them. At least they're happy. At least they're happy. The government would get a clue.
But see, the ingredient that you easily add to this thing and throws the whole equation off is greed. As soon as you include greed, then you need more cops to collect more revenue to enforce, more obeying the law so that you can collect more revenue, and it's just a never ever expanding thing. I mean, you can go to pretty much any county and you see that the only parts of the government that never seem to shrink in availability of hardware are the police departments. They're all growing
exponentially.
That's pretty scary.
It is. It's absolutely,
and yet crime is going down.
Well, isn't the reason for this from my personal opinion, is because we don't actually challenge the quote unquote authority of these men in uniform or these men in dark black muumuus called judges. We don't challenge where their authority or power comes from, and that's really the problem. All right, folks, we'll be back. Art, if you want to stay on the line, that's fine. Stay with us. Final segment of the Corporation Nation today. Thanks for joining me. Hey, tomorrow I'm going to be solo again and continue my rant. Although tomorrow, I got to tell you something. If you've been listening to the show for a while, I'm not a reader. I'm not a news reader. I don't go over the news. News is basically a bunch of crap. But what I did the other day, I was sitting at lunch with a friend, and we were joking around as we were playing backgammon. He was reading some of the stories in the Wall Street Journal. I got to tell you, man, the Wall Street Journal is, for anybody that knows anything about CAFRs, for anybody that understands this system, to read the Wall Street Journal is a painful, painful trip down the most humorous road you can go down. So I kept this paper. And I'm going to read some of the stories out of it tomorrow just to show you how ridiculous our economy actually is, or what we call our economy. Because when you hear these things, perhaps you'll be hearing them for the first time. Because most of the time we'll look at the story, we'll read the first few words, okay, that's fine. Of course, the most important thing in the stories are always the last few words, because they don't want you to read them. But amazing stuff in this newspaper, and it's basically spelling out complete fraud right in front of everybody. And I don't think people actually read the little stories and actually contemplate what they're actually saying. For instance, like when the Federal Reserve said it's going to purchase treasuries. Well, God, that means that the Federal Reserve not only is it going to create money to buy the treasuries, it's going to get double interest. It's like double tap here. It's going to get interest on its Federal Reserves, and then it's going to get the treasuries, and it's going to get interest on the treasuries, and then it's probably going to use the treasuries as collateral to do some other trade and get some kind of return on that. So it's a triple tap. This is how ridiculous our economy is right now. And when they say they have no exit strategy, that means you better, folks. You better have a real good exit strategy. And it is time to exit this system. The problem is, as we're talking about today, how do we exit it? And how do we do so in a way that's not a controlled opposition, that's not a political party, that's individual, and that is not stuck in a system of enslavement, basically, to it, of deaded and bondedness. Anyway, folks, we have Burt, Freeman Burt, and I think Art is still on the line.
Yes, sir.
Well, we got a few minutes. What do you guys want to talk about?
But I find it interesting with some of the conversations I have with people, and they, want to. One of the first things when you're talking about how government treats people and how people are feel like they're being mistreated in the courts or they're not getting justice or whatever, and I challenge them. Well, did you exert your rights? Do you even have any? Well, of course I have rights. Okay, explain to me how you have rights. This is one of the hardest things people have a hard time doing, and I always approach it with a simple attitude. Okay, you have rights. What kind of rights do you have? Do you have the right to travel? Sure I do. How do you figure? Well, I can get in my car and go with it. Okay. Do you have a driver's license? Yeah. Then you don't have a right to travel. Well, I have the right to property. Do you pay property taxes? Yeah. Then you don't have a right to property. And this is the thing that people have to understand. This goes back to what you were talking about earlier. Power. If you don't have any power, you don't have any rights.
Well, and it's ironic because your power comes from
my power.
Place. What's that?
My power comes from God, my Creator.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And see, that's the problem, is that we've allowed these people to claim power as God, not from God, but as God. And we've accepted that, and we don't realize that that's going on, the ecclesiastic nature of the civil law and its origin. So that's, when you say power, and I know Bert agrees, that is your greatest right that you have. It is inherent, and it is to follow your Creator, whatever that means to you, your God, the God that is your Creator. The only way you can lose your power is to lose your Creator, lose your God, and let someone else temporally or unspiritually act as God for you. And that's exactly what we have. And I wish people could understand that the religious exemption is the most powerful tool in all of law. It is everything. It really is.
Well, and here's another way to kind of look at this, similar to what Art is saying. When you're dealing with these regulations, laws, statutes, codes, one question to ask is, okay, do I have any rights beyond the will of the legislature? If the answer is no, then you're truly a slave, because you can only exist according to the will of that legislature. You're truly a slave if you have no rights beyond that. So when you're in front of a judge and you say, Your Honor, are my rights restricted to the will of the legislature, which basically means all regulations? If he says yes, then you say, well, Master, what would you like me to do next?
and then you go to jail and you get a T-shirt that says, I was a good little citizen, all I got was this damn shirt.
And 5 years.
Yeah, but that's the truth. I mean, if we can begin to see the truth, I mean, I am begging for someone to tell me I am a slave. Just come straight out and tell me, because then my answer is going to be, well, thank you very much. I'm going to be the best slave you ever had. And thank you for being honest.
Absolutely. But they can't be honest with you. But here's the thing, and this is one of the things I try to get people to understand. When we start getting into the concept of rights and I start explaining why they don't have rights, I always come back to this one very simple issue. You have been bound by contract through license. And there is where you waived your right in exchange for a privilege. And I don't care if it's a driver's license, a fishing license, a license, or whatever. Once you
just define what it is.
Yeah,
a license is permission to do an unlawful act.
Absolutely.
That's all it is. You have a license to kill, for instance. You have a license to drive. Wait a minute. So otherwise it's illegal. It's
well,
unlawful.
what about a license to worship God? What kind of ridiculous nonsense is that?
Exactly. Well, and this brings us back to that U.S. code. This is where that was the statement of equal rights. For those that are, if you're not familiar with my blog, I wrote an in-depth article about this. It was called "Tyranny Requires Equality." And if you understand that concept, that before you can conquer a people, you have to make them all equal.
Yes.
Until you understand that, you'll never understand how rights, what art is saying, actually, what your rights actually are, which are no rights at all.
Yeah, and I know we only have like a minute left, but I like to say this every time we get together. You people out there that go to church on a regular basis, at least one of you stand up, go to the front of your church and ask your congregation, why are we worshiping God as a government corporation? Why are we doing that? Why do we need the blessing of the state in order to worship God? Why can't we just be a church of the people? And they'll probably kick you out and never allow you to go back in there. But at least someone should stand up and say that, because if we can get just a small percentage of the people that call themselves Christians to, in fact, act like Christians, this country would be the great country that it's supposed to be.
I think the clergy response team would come and remove you.
Yeah, I'm sure. But for crying out loud, I mean, let's not be hypocrites. You know, if we go to church on Sunday, let's stand up for something real.
Well, yeah, it's what a mess we're in. We're gonna be back next week with Freeman Burt as usual. Every Thursday. Thanks, Art, for the call. Thank you, Ken, Fort Worth, as well. All right, folks, take care. Stay tuned.